Hi, I'm Dr. Brannick Riggs, Vice President of Education at dōTERRA International. And I have with me today the Scientific and Medical Education Committee here in Europe, and we're going to have a conversation today about sun and the new sun care line. So Ruth, as we talk about the sun, and there's lots of different rays that come from the sun, the question is kind of what are they, and are all of them harmful to us?
Well, I mean, of course not, because the rays that come from the sun go right the way from radio waves all the way through to your UV, gamma, X-rays, etc. Right. The longer the wavelength, the shorter the frequency, the lower the energy. But it's the high energy, high frequency waves that you get at the UV and gamma, X-rays, etc., where you get most of the harm. Now, most of those are filtered out by the atmosphere, but what does get through are the UVA and the UVB, and those are the most harmful of the sun rays that come through, and we know that they can, cause all sorts of skin issues, including up to skin cancer.
Right, right. So those ultraviolet rays are really the things that are kind of most powerful that can affect us.
I mean, there's UVC as well, but that doesn't get through in general.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the middle of the Arctic somewhere.
Yeah, perfect. Alex, there's also this thing called blue light, and we are exposing ourselves to blue light more and more and more in modern times. Tell us about blue light, what it is, and where we're getting that exposure from.
Yeah, as Ruth mentioned, you have this visible spectrum of light. And blue light is a particular range of the spectrum, 400 to 500 nanometer in wavelength. And this particular section of the light spectrum is able to penetrate the skin deeper. So it's more problematic in causing photo damage to our skin cells, to the DNA in our skin. So it comes from the sun. It can also come from devices, electronic devices, light bulbs, things like that. And so we certainly get exposure, not simply because we're inside, we might be out of the sun, but we can still get exposure from devices and electronics and things.
Many of us are sitting in front of computer screens all day, right? Or even our phones sometimes have that blue light, and we're getting lots of exposure in those ways.
And there's more and more research coming out, you see, about the damage that those wavelengths are causing.
Yeah, yeah. So Fernando, what does a natural skincare routine look like, including sun care?
Okay, so we cannot forget that the skin is the biggest organ in our body. We need to give him love and care. So the care that we have every day, your everyday routine, it depends how exposed you are to the sun or the or the environment. So first, clean it, moisture it, hydrate, apply some serums, and important, take care of the skin near to your eyes, very sensitive, and then sun care. If you are too much exposed to the sun, even if you're going to the beach or going to the country, or even when you're driving, you have your hand exposed and your arm exposed. You need to apply sunscreen, and of course, mineral sunscreen. And if you do that routine every day, at morning, at night, or during the day, depending on your exposure, you will take care of your skin.
Yeah, we've even seen photos of those that drive a truck or drive a vehicle for a living, and they have one side of their face that's aged significantly, another side that's less, and it's simply to do that exposure, right?
Yeah.
And not protecting the...
Yeah, because the sun, even if it's important for our lives, it can be harmful if we don't take care of our skin, if we are too much exposed.
Alexandra, help us understand the difference between a natural mineral-based sunscreen versus a chemical-based sunscreen, and how there can be a difference in trying to get a more natural approach to our sun care.
Yes, we have on the one side the physical mineral sunscreens, and they are working by deflecting the light rays with reflection and dispersion. The ingredients of these physical mineral sunscreens are mostly zinc oxide or kaolin or talcum. It's like a paste. It's because it's so powder-based, and because of that we all know them, that you have a white skin.
Right.
And so they are working. The great thing is they are work immediately when you apply it on the skin. So you can go into the sun in this moment when you apply it in your skin, and if you use more than and you have more from these ingredients inside your physical mineral sun care, then it's more effective. So the effectiveness is how much you use from this ingredients.
I remember as a kid seeing people with that white nose,
Yes.
right? They just cake the zinc oxide on the nose to protect it. And so you knew that, okay, they've got their sunscreen on, right?
Never mind the rest of the face.
Right. For some reason, the nose was most important. So now tell us, what about chemical sunscreens? Tell us about that.
Yeah, chemical sunscreens are totally different because they are working with absorption. So they are absorbing the UV rays. The physical mineral, they are also work a little bit with absorption, but the main difference is that the physical minerals, the ingredients are stable. They don't change. But if we have a chemical, they work with changing. That means they make from the UV light, they make infrared light and heat. And this is the normal physical process, and this process needs time. And because of that, we have to wait 15 to 20 minutes before we go out into the sun. So they don't work immediately. We have no white arms and not a white face, but we have to wait. The second problem is that these organic ingredients in the chemical sunscreens, they are not stable. And it could be that some of these ingredients go in, we apply it or we have it in our systemic way. And the second thing is that it can make the sensitization of the skin. So it can cause allergic reactions. It's interesting that when we look at children and we see a lot of children with light allergies, 10% of the children, we thought they have a light allergy. They don't have a light allergy. They have a contact allergy against chemical sunscreen. And a lot of people don't know that. So my opt is for using mineral physical sunscreen because it's safe with its ingredients. I can use it immediately, so I can cream my girl and she can go immediately out in the sun. And it's also a good water resistant product. But nevertheless, if we are in the water or if we are doing sport or if we're sweating, we have to apply our sunscreen again, that we have a better protection of our skin.
It's just on the organic, the sort of the range of sun creams that we have available to us on the sort of chemical side has been a really interesting challenge from a toxicological perspective. We've only really had sun creams around for the last sort of 30 or 40 years actually. And when we first started testing them as toxicologists, we didn't take into account the fact that they react because they're exposed to the sun. So it's introduced a whole area now where we have to actually do a whole range of tests specifically on these. And a lot of them we found out because of that are not that good on the skin. And there's a real dynamic about which ones you can use, what the toxicology is behind them. And also the environmental toxicology behind them. These all get into the water and they start affecting the coral reefs. And
that's
true. There are some really important elements there that we didn't realize.
Yeah, and we had a lot of chemical UV sunscreens at the market with hormone-like effects. They are forbidden now in the European Union, but so we know science is growing, and with time
constantly under review. I have to say,
we have constantly reviews. So,
well, as Fernando mentioned, the skin is the largest organ of the body, and we know that we absorb about 60% of the things that we put on our skin. So when dealing with synthetics, like our other sunscreens, it's a challenge. But with the mineral sunscreens, the beauty is that we absorb very little of that, larger molecules, etc.
And it's so interesting that you have on the one side something that have to protect you from the sun, but on the other side it's photosensible. It's photosensible, and because of that, things could happen in our skin.
Yeah. So Ruth, how can someone determine the most effective natural sunscreen for their skin type and level of sun exposure?
Well, I mean, the main elements that you have to take into consideration are what your skin type is, and that's it. The easiest way to look at that is probably just how pale or how dark skinned you are. That's the best indicator of how tolerant you are of the sun in general.
And that determines where your genetics came from, right?
Yeah,
whether or not your ancestors were exposed to a lot of sun or very little sun.
Yeah. Also, your reaction to sun. So people sometimes if you burn very easily, or if you develop freckles or moles easily when you go out into the sun, that's an indication that you need to sort of put some high protection on there. Yeah. I think the second factor that's really important is the intensity of the sun where you are. I mean, it varies where you are in the world, how intense the sun. There are indicators you can look up and see what the intensity is, and that if you're in an area where you have very high intensity sun, then you should be putting more protection on. And then the third thing is how much time you are spending in the sun. If you're a lorry driver where you have the side exposed all the time, you might want to make sure you protect that side that little bit more. So those are the sort of factors that you really need to take into consideration. And then you need to look at what they call the SPF, the sun protection factor, within the sun cream itself as well. But I have to say it's less important than people often think it is. Obviously, the higher sun protection factor, the higher the protection is. But just using any sun cream, and yet at a sun protection factor of 15, you've already got something like 93% of the protection you're going to get from it. Having said that, I don't think any sun cream is going to give you 100%
correct
protection. So you do need to wear sunglasses, wear a hat, protect yourself from the sun in other ways as well, and make sure that you keep putting it on. And try not to go out too often in the sun.
Right. Alex, can you give us some examples of some natural ingredients that come from either plant extracts or oils that might be included in a good natural sun care product?
Yeah, some of the internal compounds we can consume, they're almost like an internal natural sunscreen that are absorbing these light waves. So think of things like carotenoids, astaxanthin, lycopene, lutein, beta-carotene. These things are able to help to neutralize those.
Those sound similar to some things that we could find in a product like Lifelong Vitality.
Yeah, maybe a Z-omega soft gel.
Interesting, yeah.
Kind of a reddish color.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they're powerful compounds, and they're produced by plants for the same reason. Topically, we have some options, though, from a natural perspective, to help us with not just the prevention of photo damage, but also the recovery from photo damage from the sun. Things like copaiba oil, frankincense, myrrh. The non-citrus oils are beneficial that way. And we have fatty oils as well, so jojoba and avocado, coconut, carrot seed. These types of fatty oils are also not just protective of the skin prior to damage, but if you have incurred photo damage, then they can help with the recovery.
Yeah, some of that damage happens through the oxidative stress of the sun, right? So having some products that are high in antioxidants can be extremely helpful at protecting and making sure that we don't accumulate more and more damage. Right?
Yes, like the resveratrol in the Metapower Advantage. Plants are releasing resveratrol when they have stress because of UV light. So this is protecting the plants from it.
Yeah, yeah. Fernando, how often should someone apply and reapply a natural sunscreen to protect their cells from the sun, and how does this compare to chemical sunscreens?
Okay, so depending on the time of exposure, but you should renew your sunscreen every 2 hours. It depends if you're sweat, if you're going to the water, then you need to put more. The thing is, from the mineral sunscreen, when you apply, it acts immediately.
Yeah.
The chemical, because it needs to all the process be absorbed, they need, like Alexander says, at least 20 minutes to take effect. So at the end, you have 1 hour, 40 minutes with the chemicals and 2 hours with the minerals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing that I love about the mineral sunscreen is that if you can see it, you know that it's there, right? And so as a father of children, sometimes you're busy, you're at the beach or you're in the mountains and you go, oh my gosh, did I put sunscreen on the kids? You can look at the child with the mineral sunscreen and go, yep, I put sunscreen on them. With the minerals, with the chemical sunscreens, you can't always tell, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to go over and smell them, and that smell that you're getting is actually synthetics that they've put in there to make it smell a certain way, and then you go, oh yeah, I put this on them. The mineral sunscreen is beautiful because then you can just look at them and determine that. So I enjoy spending time in the mountains, and of course as you're higher in elevation, you get more and more exposure to that UV wavelength of light, and so this has become really a routine for me as I'm outside, as I'm sure it has for you all, as you've experienced the amazing benefits of our mineral sun care line and the amazing product that it is. I'm sure soon it will become a staple in all of our wellness advocates here in Europe, finding that how amazing this is for them and taking care of their own families and their friends as well. So thank you for lending your expertise to today's conversation, and we appreciate it.